Welcome to the Tim Booker channel. Wisdom deserves to be spread. Wishing you an enjoyable time listening to books. Today, we are dissecting the book, How to Think Straight About Psychology. What is true scientific psychology? This book is authored by Keith E. Stanovich, a psychology professor in the Human Development and Applied Psychology Department at the University of Toronto in Canada. He has received a Lifetime Achievement Award from the American Psychological Association in 2012. Stanovich has written many best-selling books, including well-known titles like What Intelligence Tests Miss and The Robot's Rebellion. The book we are discussing today, How to Think Straight About Psychology, was first published in 1983. It has been widely popular for over 30 years and is considered a classic introductory text to psychology. Over 300 educational institutions worldwide have adopted it, and it is now in its 9th edition. Stanovich believes that the general public has many misconceptions about psychology and the need for a better understanding of what real scientific psychology looks like. Today, let's discuss this topic from 3 aspects. First, what is scientific psychology? Second, why are many popular so-called psychology topics actually pseudoscience? Third, what are the 2 common misconceptions about scientific psychology? Let's dive into each of these. Starting with the first point, what is scientific psychology? When it comes to psychology, many people have limited understanding, and media reporting often compounds these misunderstandings. For example, astrology and supernatural phenomena are sometimes mistakenly associated with psychology. This stems from a lack of knowledge about psychology. Interestingly, Sigmund Freud, a figure frequently associated with psychology, has greatly influenced public perceptions of the field, even though his methods and theories are largely outdated. Modern psychology is rooted in empirical data and scientific methods. It goes beyond personal experiences and relies on rigorous scientific standards to study human and animal behavior, ensuring that all conclusions are reliable and evidence-based. For instance, the belief that having milk makes you a mother was tested scientifically with an experiment involving baby monkeys and revealed the importance of emotional factors in addition to basic needs. Scientific psychology is a discipline based on scientific research methods. When applied correctly, it separates legitimate psychological inquiries from philosophical questions about human nature, which are beyond the scope of empirical investigation. Some people may argue, you're studying psychology, and you can't even research these most basic and fundamental questions, so how can you develop your psychology? This question has been a long-standing skepticism about whether psychology is a science. This viewpoint is known as essentialism, a perspective in which people believe that you must provide ultimate explanations for the inner essence of a phenomenon to have a valid scientific theory. However, in reality, at least at this stage, science cannot provide answers to many ultimate questions, and there's no guarantee it will in the future. But this doesn't mean that scientific research is meaningless in the absence of ultimate answers. For example, in physics, questions like, what does Earth's gravity really mean? How is gravitational force generated? Why do 2 objects attract each other? What is its essence, have remained unanswered for years. Physicists don't have a definite answer to these questions yet, but that hasn't hindered the rapid development of physics, benefiting humanity immensely. Psychology faces a similar situation. We may not know the essence of some psychological phenomena, but that doesn't prevent scientific research. In fact, psychologists are not essentialists, they are operationalists. Operationalists base their work on observable, quantifiable facts and use quantitative data to conduct research. To make their research measurable, psychologists must define certain psychological phenomena differently from how the general public might understand them. For instance, our everyday understanding of anxiety is feeling uncomfortable or nervous. However, in psychology, this personal, subjective experience is difficult to quantify. Psychologists redefine anxiety as something quantifiable, such as the result of a questionnaire or a physiological measurement exceeding a certain value. This operational definition enables psychologists to conduct quantitative experiments and research on concepts like anxiety, much like physicists do in their laboratories. You might wonder, do psychologists conduct research in the laboratory? Indeed, they do. One well-known psychological principle, classical conditioning, was discovered through laboratory experiments by Ivan Pavlov. Pavlov's research was meticulous and precise, involving conditioned reflexes, and it was far more complex than the popular image of a dog salivating at the sound of a bell. He established a unique, controlled environment to ensure that external factors didn't affect the experiment's outcome. His work began with metronomes, not bells, to trigger the dog's conditioned reflex, making it a rigorous scientific endeavor. Moreover, the measurement of salivation wasn't just visual observation but involved a minor surgical procedure to collect saliva through a small incision in the dog's lip, allowing precise quantification. Therefore, just like the principles of classical conditioning, many psychological findings, like those in physics, are the result of extensive experimentation and data measurement in a laboratory setting. As a result, the author emphasizes that psychology, like physics, is indeed a science and adheres to three key principles. It investigates answerable questions, applies systematic empiricism, relying on observable facts, and produces public knowledge, which means that its findings must be reproducible by others. Applying these scientific standards, we can assess many widely circulated psychological concepts in the market and find that a significant portion of what's commonly referred to as psychology is, in fact, pseudoscience. Pseudopsychology falls into two main categories. The first type tries to package itself as psychology, dealing with topics like extrasensory perception, telekinesis, and reincarnation. The second type is known as self-help psychology, and while not all self-help books are pseudoscientific, a considerable number of them belong to this category. For instance, some books claim to have invented new therapies to help you lose weight quickly or find a girlfriend rapidly. While these books may sell well, their conclusions often don't stand up to scrutiny. Many authors rely on personal or anecdotal research and claim breakthrough discoveries without the rigorous scientific validation that genuine psychology demands. Why do these contents labeled as pseudopsychology become popular? That's the topic we'll discuss in the second part. In reality, these unscientific branches of psychology gain popularity because they often employ tricks that are not easily discernible to the general public. Let's now explore the tactics they use to mislead us. Firstly, one common trick in pseudopsychology is being unfalsifiable. In other words, the conclusions presented by these researchers cannot be proven true or false. A notable example of this was seen on the famous American talk show, The Oprah Winfrey Show. It featured the director of a Human Potential Institute, who claimed that a person's life path and their birth order at home were interconnected. Essentially, being the firstborn or secondborn at home could determine your life's destiny. During the show, an audience member asked why his older brother was a workaholic, neglecting even his wife and son because of his relentless pursuit of success. The director inquired about the birth order of this individual, to which the audience member responded, "He is the firstborn." The director then said, "That explains it. This is because in a family, the firstborn receives the highest expectations and attention from parents. So, the firstborn individuals have various ambitions and motivations that drive them to work hard. We call this upward spiraling motivation. Therefore, the parents' expectations turn into your brother's relentless pursuit of success because he is the firstborn." At this point, another audience member had a different perspective. He said, "Director, my older brother, who is the firstborn, also received high expectations from our parents, but he isn't motivated. He dropped out of school after 1 year and went to live on a mountain, and the last time we saw him, he was catching insects alone with no ambition for success. What could be the reason for this?" The director replied, "Well, this is easy to understand. The upward spiraling motivation of your brother was disrupted for some reason. As a result, his subconscious resistance to your parents' expectations led to self-sabotage as a form of resistance." You might notice that this theory presented by the director is an unfalsifiable one. Regardless of whether the results of experiments align with or contradict his theory, he can provide explanations that seem plausible, making it a theory that cannot be proven right or wrong. This is a crucial reason why the scientific community has largely moved away from Freudian theories. While Freud's psychoanalysis could explain nearly everything, it's this very trait, being able to explain everything, that renders it scientifically useless. When a theory can explain both the presence and absence of any phenomenon, it doesn't meet the criteria of falsifiability, and thus, it isn't in line with scientific principles. Now, many pseudo-psychological ideas on the market follow this pattern of unfalsifiability. Their views are such that they can't be definitively disproven, which robs them of scientific validity. That's the first common trick of pseudopsychology. The second trick involves using testimonies from individual cases as evidence. In other words, these pseudo-psychological products often feature beneficiaries coming forward to share their experiences. For instance, self-help products that claim to cure depression or facilitate weight loss using psychological methods typically showcase beneficiaries who testify about the benefits they've received. This practice can be highly misleading, as many people might wonder, why would so many individuals vouch for its effectiveness? However, the crucial principle in scientific research is that individual case studies are insufficient evidence because they might include a placebo effect. The placebo effect suggests that the beneficiaries might not be benefiting from the treatment itself but rather from psychological suggestions or even spontaneous healing. People attribute the effects to the treatment they received. Moreover, those who didn't experience positive effects would not be featured in these testimonials. A magician named James Randi in the United States was a vocal critic of such scams. For example, he exposed the pseudoscientific theory of biorhythms that was widespread in the US some years ago. This theory claimed that everyone has a unique biorhythm that could predict their behavior. In one instance, Randi invited a listener to verify this theory. The listener had to maintain a diary of his mental states and behaviors for 2 months and then compare it to a biorhythm chart he received. The result was surprising. The listener was delighted to report a 90% accuracy in predicting his actions based on the biorhythm chart. However, Randi later revealed that this was a deception. The listener received the wrong biorhythm chart, not his own. When he was given a chart based on his actual biorhythms, he reported even greater accuracy. The truth is, the biorhythm theory was a pseudoscience that made things look as if they matched an individual situation, but in reality, it was not necessarily the case. Randi even conducted an amusing experiment to demonstrate that you don't need to present your theories convincingly to find supporters. On a radio show, he randomly claimed that he had seen an orange V-shaped object flying above New Jersey. Immediately, the phone lines were flooded with callers confirming the same sighting, adding details that Randi hadn't mentioned. In reality, the object was something Randi imagined on the spot. This highlights that even when someone casually fabricates a belief, you can easily find witnesses. So, when pseudopsychologists assert their theories and have a group of people affirm them, it doesn't necessarily validate their theories. It's just one more common trick employed in pseudopsychology. The third common trick of pseudopsychology is when they claim their content is confidential, not meant to be shared openly, and can only be experienced by specific individuals. This pertains to practices like clairvoyance and supernatural abilities, which are supposedly accessible only at certain times, in specific places, and under the guidance of particular individuals. Although some psychologists have researched extrasensory perception, whenever they subjected such abilities to scientific scrutiny and tightly controlled the environmental factors, the claimed superhuman abilities ceased to function. These abilities were explained away by saying that skeptics carry negative energy that hampers their demonstration. When the doubters leave, the powers allegedly return. This form of so-called supernatural power is a scam, and it's important to note that these powers cannot be reproduced, making them ineligible for scientific examination. The tricks discussed here, including unfalsifiability, reliance on individual cases, and the unverifiable nature of the content, are some of the most frequently used tactics in pseudopsychology. In addition, other tactics such as confusing correlation with causation or poorly designed experimental conditions can make an untrustworthy pseudopsychological theory appear scientifically robust. These seemingly scientific pseudopsychological ideas often appeal to the general public's sense of wonder, aligning with the rules of mass communication and consequently becoming popular. As a result, sometimes we inadvertently mistake pseudoscience for real science. However, what's even more interesting is that when we truly face scientific psychology, there are often many misunderstandings and doubts. Why is that? This brings us to our third topic for today: 2 common misconceptions about scientific psychology. The first misconception people have about scientific psychology is, what's the use of those experiments you psychologists do? As we mentioned earlier, psychology, like physics, often conducts experiments in a laboratory setting. Many people may feel that these experiments don't seem relevant to real-life situations. They might say, the conditions you set up in those experiments would never happen in the real world. What's the point of your conclusions? In response to this, the author explains that scientific research can be divided into 2 categories: applied research and basic research. Applied research directly translates into products that enhance societal benefits. For instance, researching how to build fighter jets and bombers is immediately applicable in warfare. On the other hand, there's a lot of research conducted in laboratories that is considered basic research. This type of research doesn't have immediate applications but aims to discover or confirm certain theories. Sometimes, it's about confirming the details or reliability of a theory. The value of this basic research lies in the fact that only theories that have been repeatedly confirmed and found accurate can eventually be used effectively. For example, Pavlov's experiments with dogs, which we mentioned earlier, were basic research but became the foundation for many treatments in psychology. The second challenge that scientific psychology presents to us is that some of its conclusions often seem inconsistent with our personal experiences and observations. For instance, a psychology teacher may discuss a psychological phenomenon in class, and a student might stand up and say, "Teacher, what you're saying is wrong. My cousin's experience is entirely different from what you're describing." As a psychologist, how do you explain such contradictions? These types of challenges are quite common in our daily lives. For instance, we all know that smoking is harmful to health and can shorten one's life. But when you try to convince a heavy smoker to quit, they might point to someone like old Wang across the street who has been smoking for decades and is now 80 years old, seemingly unaffected. So, why do conclusions sometimes differ from what we observe? The answer to this question lies in the fact that fields like psychology, sociology, and even medicine often produce probabilistic conclusions. This means they can only predict the likelihood of a particular outcome, but it doesn't guarantee that every individual will conform to that conclusion. This is similar to saying that men are, on average, taller than women. It doesn't mean every man is taller than every woman, but it describes the general trend. To understand scientific psychology, it's essential to think in terms of statistical probabilities. Many of us find it challenging to use probabilistic thinking when we see specific, vivid, and real-life examples. However, it's crucial to recognize that psychological research often deals with probabilities rather than certainties. To sum up, this has been the main content of the book, This is Psychology. Thank you for listening. Congratulations on completing another book. We appreciate your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker Channel audiobook channel. Don't forget to like and share with your family and friends because wisdom is worth spreading. Thank you, and goodbye.